Felix's room is a collaboration between the creative studio Scanlab Studios, who specialise in large-scale 3D scanning, and the writer and professor of media arts, Adam Ganz, co-produced with the Berliner Ensemble. The production premiered in Berlin in June this year to critical acclaim. And to tell us more about how 3D scanning technology has been used to create this extraordinary theatre experience, Matt Shaw from Scanlab joins us, as does Adam Ganz. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Adam Ganz from Royal Holloway and Story Futures, and this is Matt Shaw from Scanlab Projects, and we're here to talk about Felix's room, and that is Felix Ganz, my great-grandfather, with his second wife Erna, pictured outside his house in Mainz in about 1939, I think, and Felix was a businessman, a merchant, an art collector, a carpet dealer, carpet manufacturer, had kind of various kind of businesses in which we'll hear a little bit more about later on. In 1942, he was sent to Theresienstadt and he was murdered in Auschwitz in 1944. And he was then 75. He'd lived an interesting life, and I'd been fascinated about how one might tell his story. There were hundreds of letters, including letters that he wrote from a room in the Jewish house in Mainz, but correspondence that goes over 40 years, photographs of the business, and I'd kind of wondered, how am I going to tell this story? What's going to make it fresh? What's going to make it kind of in any way different? And there was this one sketch, which when he was sent in 1941 to a so-called Jewish house in Mainz, he had to move into one room with Erna, and he sent this sketch of the room to my great-aunt, who was in safety in Switzerland, and all the furniture they've been able to bring with him, what photos are on which wall, which family members, pictures of my father or my great-aunts or pictures of places that he loved. And I met Scanlab through Story Futures, the creative cluster which Royal Holloway was a part of, and I suddenly realized after looking at that work that this was a spatial story, and that Scanlab technology, LiDAR scanning, was the way to tell the story. So I said to Matt, what do you think? We spent time in Scanlab studio, and the response was, yes, this is a fantastic idea. We need maybe £500,000 or £1 million.
Natural response.
Let's start seeing how we can raise the money. But then we found there was open call from the Kulturstiftung des Bundes, the German government, to use new technology in theatre and opera, which we won. 120,000 euros plus the resources of the Berliner Ensemble and the Komische Oper Berlin, both of which are fantastic organizations. There was one object, which I probably should have mentioned sooner, which survived in the room, which was discovered in the Landesmuseum in Mainz in 2019, which was a chest of drawers, which is mentioned on the sketch. And I had always been fascinated by this object because obviously Felix and Erna will have opened the drawers, they will have engaged with it, and presumably whatever they kept in it, their sheets, their pillowcases, their shirts, there's a kind of absolute direct physical connection with them. And so right from the heart of the bid, we had this idea of the chest of drawers being part of it, and actually we were able to bring it to the Berliner Ensemble. It was on stage, the only physical object surrounded by the projections and LiDAR scans, which Scanlab created, and which Matt is going to tell you more about.
So normally at the start of a Scanlab project, we have something to scan. But in the first instance here, there's a reason behind that. Those enormous point clouds that Ryan was talking about earlier on as being problematic and impossible to work with, that's actually Scanlab's bread and butter. Like, those are our playthings. That's what we enjoy creating with and storytelling with. But here we have a sketch, a chest of drawers, letters and some photographs. And so we started this kind of forensic examination of those letters and those photographs. And along with a team of experts at various universities, we essentially tried to recreate this room. We went through this meticulous modeling exercise. And we started to forensically search for things to populate that sketch. So we knew about the building type, because some of the neighboring properties survived the war. We found photos of some of Felix's furniture in some of his previous homes. As Adam said, we know exactly where the pictures were on the wall. And the letters contain some real practicalities as well, like the voltage of stoves and things like this. So gradually we resurrected this version of the room, and we reconstructed this space down to millimeter detail, to the scratches on the pots and pans, to the folds of the bed sheet, the creases on the letters. This was made in a relatively traditional way, so CGI modeling, but we need that point cloud. So we actually built a virtual version of our 3D scanners, and we virtually 3D scanned a model to create the point clouds that you're seeing here. That's turned into a relatively standard projection mapping exercise, but when these images come together on stage, you get this kind of holographic resurrection of the space. It almost exists like a ghost or a kind of a memory of the room that appears around our actors. And we really believe that this version of the room is as accurate, as fact-based as we could get to in this process. And that accuracy, that kind of sense of being real, it holds through to the way that we tell the whole story as well. So 80% of the dialogue in this play comes verbatim from the letters that Felix has written inside this room, that he's sent from this room. Adam actually appears on stage as well as himself, adding comment to what's taking place, observing what's going on inside the room there, occasionally critiquing our own kind of resurrection process and our own kind of fact-finding process as well. The room becomes a place in which Felix and Erna can live a life. It becomes a place in which the actors, Veit and Alma, can perform, can explore, can interact with things. And it's virtual, it's malleable, so we can change the opacity of walls and give our audience better visual access to the action that's going on in there. But because it's virtual, we can also do so many more things as well. We flip the room round entirely and give the audience this kind of half version of that sketch, which was the origin of our story here. We can make the room spin around, and we treat that room much more like an actor than we do a stage set, I guess. And it isn't just restricted to being that room as well. It can become a memory palace. It can completely disintegrate. So in this instance here, it becomes a ballroom in the house that Felix used to live in, this grand mansion where he would kind of entertain high society. And they get so lost in these memories that actually the room completely disappears. The theatre space becomes a part of that memory. Opera singers perform on stage, and the audience, as well as the actors, are lost inside that memory. But ultimately, we do come back to that room. This is now a picture of Olga, the only real aspect of Olga that's left that Felix has access to inside the walls of his prison here. It's a memory palace. The actors explore these virtual recreations of neon of early 20th century Berlin, where Felix was, an important commercial player. And we can allow them to travel as well. Here they're in the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, surrounded by the carpets, which were such an enormous part of Felix's trading empire. We're actually revisiting scans from the Scanlab archive here as well, so many of our journeys with the Invisible Cities program with the BBC have actually overlapped 100 years later with the spaces that Felix was trading in around the world. But ultimately, it comes back to this room. That memory scene of the carpets in Istanbul is rudely interrupted by this kind of thud on the door. Wow. And the Gestapo are raiding the neighboring property.
And the chest of drawers also plays a really important part. I've not talked about the kind of music. Alma, who's a singer from the Komische Oper, sings 4 different songs because she has no written words. We use song to make her communicate. But I have a colleague at Royal Holloway, Tonya Coe, who specializes in writing music for amplified objects, and she wrote a kind of duet for Singer and Chest of Drawers where Alma talks about the kind of intimacy and the feelings of the chest of drawers, but also we hear amplified the sounds that they actually heard in their house in the Kaiserstraße. You can see also the ways in which the ability to work with a kind of fantastic sound team, and Christoph Breidler, the conductor from the Komische Oper, who was kind of thinking about how do we integrate recorded sound and live sound and performance. So this is a kind of extraordinarily moving point of Alma's connection. They're then deported, and we decide, Adam, the narrator, says, I don't want you to imagine this anymore. And the story kind of ends as the house is stripped. When the audience left, Matt created kind of visuals of the letters so the audience reminded of the factual things which appeared during the performance as the audience left. And just to kind of say that I said that we knew nothing about Erna, but in fact Erna's great niece was discovered. She now lives in Melbourne in Australia, and she came to Berlin for the performance. Not only was that a phenomenal reconnection, but she also brought more information to add to the story, more letters and many more photographs of Erna.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.